back in the start of 2020, I released my first travel vlog of that year. And I had absolutely no intention of stopping them. I had several planned out. I was really insistent with vlogs and everything else. I was just going to hit the ground running in 2020. And then COVID happened, didn't it? I recorded the first one and I had plans in place to do the second one, but at that point there was no lockdown, but the talk around COVID was getting pretty serious. So I said to the guys to collaborate with then, you know, let's hold off on this until we can be sure it's safe. And then I think all of maybe 3 weeks later, COVID happened. And so we were locked down, and then things started to get a little bit better, and then it got worse again, and then we had more lockdowns, and then Christmas, and then more lockdowns, and then... yeah, basically it was a never-ending sort of spiral of COVID that we are now out of, but basically it just kept getting put back and put back and put back and put back. And yeah, then more things happened in my personal life, which made me put sort of everything back, and you know, the person I used to do these with, I'm no longer in contact with him, so yeah, it just never happened. But I always planned to bring these back. I always planned to do it, and well, I'm going back. I'm doing this. I'm doing what I said I was going to do back at the start of 2020. Finally. I mean, this video has been planned, well, not been scripted or anything, but it's been planned out that I was going to do this since the start of 2020, like February 2020. So now we can finally do this. I think they're going to be different here because I'm shooting solo, whereas I didn't used to do that. But I still want to do this. I still really want to do this. So, let's go. So, here we are. And as you can already see by the title of the video, we're doing one on the Great Clacton Giant, which some of you are probably thinking, hang on, he's done this before. Yeah, if you're a long-time viewer, I have. That video was inaccurate. That video was full of inaccuracies, and it's also the only one about the topic online that I can find. So, I'm not happy with that being inaccurate. So I'm going to quote my sources down below, and I'm actually going to make sure we get this one right, and once this one's out, I'm going to hide the other one, so that there is one video out for it, but it's right. Anyway, let's go. I said that already, haven't I? Let's go to the church. Yeah, that's slightly different. The story we're going to tell today is one of those local stories. The kind that everyone sort of just accepts, but nobody is really sure how much, if any of it, is true. We're going to tell the story of a man called John Bantoft, who was also known as the Great Clacton Giant. He was known as that for a good reason, because a man in the late 1700s who stood at 7 feet 4 inches, that's over 2.2 meters in metric, in a time where the average person was a fair bit shorter than they are today, he would have certainly stood out. That wasn't necessarily what he was known for, though. He was mostly known because of the boasting of his smuggling escapades, spending his time in his local pub known as the Ship Inn, and basically telling anyone who would listen, whether they were real or just told tales, pun fully intended, is not known. His cottage was searched many times, but no smuggled goods were ever found. Apparently it was common knowledge from the people of the then village that he hid the silks and tobacco he smuggled under gravestones in the church, because he was the only man in the town who was strong enough to move the gravestones to put the stuff in and get them out. Nobody else apparently could. When he died in 1807, apparently his fellow smugglers could never find his goods. He was buried in the graveyard of the church, supposedly with the wrong date on the grave for his death, and there is definitely something of a sweet irony that he was buried where his treasures supposedly were. However, I have not been able to locate the grave, and although I didn't have a chance to this time, when I last went I did speak to some of the people working at the local church, and they didn't know either. However, with this church and churchyard being at least 1,000 years old, it was mentioned in the Domesday Book, which is a record book from 1086, so it's at least that old. In a town that is over 2,100 years old, it could so easily have been lost. I'm sure so many graves have been. So what evidence is there of this man? None, really. I found a couple of mentions of him online, one from a local history website and one from a local newspaper, likely using that website. but it's really hard to say. I had a little look into the birth and death records as best as I could. I found no mention of his name, but the records from those times are very incomplete. But I also think it doesn't really matter. It's a fun story. It's something that makes the small and ancient little town that most people have never heard of just a little bit different. And ultimately, we can never know. Even if we found the grave and the body, that doesn't mean that the smuggling stories were true. We don't know what he did. All we know are the stories and the rumours and the speculations about him. So that was the story of John Bantoff, or at least a more accurate version of it. I was going to shoot this there and talk a bit more about some of the things I thought, but it got very dark very quick and there was not really much in terms of lighting. I did go around as many of the graves that I had time to look at. I didn't look at every single one. To be honest, most of them were illegible. But even then, you know, his grave is supposed to be 1807 and the earliest one that I was finding was 1820. So it makes me wonder if all the old ones are just gone. And to be honest, there were many there that sort of matched the general description, that it was plain and not much on it, but the writing was completely faded. So he might very well be there, but we will never know. So, is this true? I don't know. I wish I could say it was, but I don't know. I have no doubts that those who've looked into it before and the sources I've got down below have done their absolute very best to be as accurate as possible, but verifying a little local stories from over 200 years ago is just not really possible. So it's up to you. What do you think? Could he have existed? There were smugglers here. Revenue officers were attacked maybe only about 60 years or so before he lived in sort of very, very close to where this was. So this was definitely a smuggler's hub. That was well known. So it's possible. Let me know what you think about the possibility of the story, whether or not it could have happened, and also let me know what you think about this video. It was good to go back and get this right, and I have a couple more I want to do in the future, so they'll happen eventually. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon.